The air hung heavy and still, thick with the scent of pine and the distant metallic tang of the old quarry. It was past midnight, the kind of darkness that felt less like an absence of light and more like a palpable presence, pressing in from all sides. We were just kids, really, a loose collection of friends and acquaintances, drawn together by the promise of something more, something forbidden, something that would make us feel less like the awkward, uncertain beings we were. There was a collective craving for belonging, that deep primal need to be part of a tribe, to share a secret, to prove ourselves worthy in the eyes of our peers. The bonfire crackled, spitting embers into the inky sky, casting dancing shadows that stretched and contorted, making the familiar woods feel alien and imbued with an unsettling quality. Sarah huddled closer to the flames, her usually bright eyes wide with a mix of excitement and apprehension, a common duality in such clandestine gatherings. Ben, always the loudest and most boisterous, was engaged in an overt attempt to impress Chloe, who in turn kept glancing nervously over her shoulder, a subtle indicator of her unease. And I, Alex, found myself observing the scene, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. I was new to this particular group, new to this kind of late-night recklessness, and every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to go home. Yet the pull of acceptance, the pervasive fear of being left out, proved to be a far stronger current, anchoring me to the unfolding events. Then Mark arrived. He was older, a year or two our senior, and carried himself with an air of casual authority that none of us possessed. He exuded that dangerous charisma, the kind that compelled you to follow him, even when a deeper intuition warned against it. He had been the one to suggest this, the initiation ritual, a whispered legend among the younger kids, shrouded in a mixture of fear and fascination. He tossed a worn leather bag onto the ground, a smirk playing on his lips, a gesture that seemed both deliberate and theatrical. "All right, everyone," he announced, his voice low, cutting through the crackle of the fire with an almost preternatural clarity. "Time to earn your stripes." A nervous titter ran through the group, a collective release of tension that quickly dissipated. Some exchanged furtive glances, a few shifted uncomfortably, their body language betraying a nascent apprehension. "What exactly are we doing, Mark?" Chloe asked, her voice barely a whisper imbued with a fragile uncertainty. Mark simply grinned, a predatory glint in his eyes, as he pulled out a handful of chalk sticks and a bundle of dried herbs from his bag. "Nothing much, just a little something to bind us, to make us truly one, a mark of loyalty." He began to sketch a complex pattern on the dusty ground, a series of interlocking circles and sharp angular lines that seemed to writhe in the firelight, taking on an almost organic quality. It looked ancient, unsettling, nothing like the childish doodles we'd expected from a mere prank. He explained the rules with a theatrical flourish, his words carrying an unusual weight. Each of us had to draw a segment of the symbol, then stand within its boundaries and repeat a simple phrase he'd teach us. On the surface, it sounded ridiculous, a childish game designed to elicit a reaction, but the way he articulated it, the intensity in his eyes, made it feel weighty, significant, almost sacred. Sarah, ever the pragmatist and the most grounded among us, scoffed, her skepticism evident. "Seriously, Mark, this is just some made-up nonsense, right?" Mark just met her gaze, his smirk unwavering, a silent challenge in his eyes. "Only if you believe it is." The unspoken challenge hung in the air, a heavy, palpable presence. To back out now would be to admit fear, to be branded a coward, to lose the fragile foothold I'd gained in this group. My gut screamed a resounding no, but my mouth stayed shut, paralyzed by the social pressure. One by one, we took a piece of chalk. My hand trembled as I knelt. the cool dust gritty beneath my fingers, a tangible reminder of the earth's indifference. I tried to mimic Mark's confident strokes, but my lines were hesitant, uneven, betraying my inner turmoil. It felt silly, a charade, yet a strange tension hummed beneath the surface, an undercurrent of something profound and unsettling. We finished the drawing, a sprawling, intricate design that now encircled the bonfire. It looked like something from an old forgotten book, a symbol of power or protection, or perhaps something far darker, its true purpose veiled in mystery. Mark then instructed us to stand within the boundaries of the symbol, forming a rough circle around the fire. The air grew noticeably colder, a sudden sharp chill that made us shiver despite the proximity of the flames, an inexplicable drop in temperature that defied natural explanation. "Now," Mark said, his voice dropping to an almost reverent tone, a stark contrast to his earlier bravado. "Repeat after me." He chanted a series of guttural, unfamiliar words, their cadence ancient and alien. They felt strange on my tongue, a foreign vibration that resonated deep in my chest, stirring something primal within. We repeated them, our voices a hesitant, uneven chorus, a collective incantation. And then it happened. A faint, ethereal glow began to emanate from the chalk lines on the ground. It started as a subtle shimmer, barely perceptible, like moonlight catching on dust motes, a trick of the light. Then it intensified, a soft pulsing light, a pale sickly green that cast our faces in an eerie pallor, transforming our familiar features into something grotesque. The nervous laughter died, replaced by a stunned silence. Ben's jaw went slack, his usual bravado replaced by a look of utter disbelief. Chloe let out a small, terrified whimper, a sound of pure unadulterated fear. Sarah, who had been so skeptical, now stared at the glowing lines with wide, disbelieving eyes, her scientific mind struggling to reconcile what she saw with what she knew. What is that?" Ben stammered, his voice cracking, the question hanging heavy in the air. Mark, for the first time, looked genuinely unnerved. His confident smirk had vanished, replaced by a flicker of raw fear, a primal terror that mirrored our own. He took a step back, his eyes darting around the circle as if searching for an explanation, or an escape from a situation he no longer controlled. The glow brightened, pulsing in rhythm with an almost imperceptible hum that now filled the air, a low thrumming that vibrated in my teeth, in my bones, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself. This was not a joke. This was not a game. This was real. The hum grew louder, a deep, resonant throb that seemed to press in on my skull, threatening to shatter my composure. The green light pulsed faster, casting grotesque shadows that danced like specters around us, their forms shifting and contorting with malevolent intent. Then Ben moved. His eyes, usually so full of boisterous energy, were now vacant, unfocused, devoid of any spark of recognition. His body stiffened, his arms rising slowly, deliberately, as if pulled by invisible strings, a marionette to an unseen puppeteer. He began to repeat Mark's chant, but his voice was flat, devoid of emotion, a hollow echo chilling in its emptiness. "Ben, what are you doing?" Sarah cried, her voice laced with terror. A desperate plea. She reached out to him, but he did not respond, his gaze fixed on some unseen point beyond us, lost to whatever force now controlled him. Then Sarah herself began to sway, her head tilted to one side, a slow, unnatural movement, a macabre dance, her eyes glazed over, mirroring Ben's vacant stare, reflecting the eerie green light. She took a step, then another, moving towards the center of the glowing symbol, her feet dragging as if through thick mud, her will no longer her own. Chloe let out a choked sob, trying to back away, but her legs seemed rooted to the spot, defying her desperate attempts to flee. A strange guttural sound escaped her lips, a low moan that was not her own, a sound of profound distress. Her body began to twitch, a series of jerky, uncontrolled movements like a puppet whose strings were being pulled by a clumsy, malevolent hand. Panic seized me, cold and sharp, a visceral terror that threatened to overwhelm my senses. This was not just some weird light show. Something was happening to them. My friends, the people I just wanted to belong with, were transforming before my eyes, becoming something else entirely, something alien and terrifying. "Stop it! Mark, make it stop!" I yelled, my voice hoarse with fear, a desperate, futile cry. I tried to grab Sarah to pull her out of the glowing circle, but her skin felt cold, clammy, and her grip, when she instinctively pushed back, was unnaturally strong, imbued with an unearthly power. Her eyes, now glowing faintly with the same green light as the symbol, stared through me, devoid of recognition, a chilling void. I stumbled back, my heart hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. I had to get out, I had to run. I turned, desperate to flee, but my legs felt heavy, as if weighted with lead, each movement an immense effort. The ground beneath my feet seemed to ripple, to pull at me, making every step an agonizing struggle. The hum intensified, a deafening roar in my ears, and the green light pulsed with blinding ferocity, threatening to consume my vision. I could feel a pressure building in my head, a cold, invasive sensation as if something was trying to pry its way into my mind, to usurp my very consciousness. I fought it, shaking my head, trying to clear the fog that was beginning to creep into my thoughts, to maintain my grip on reality. Through the haze of terror and the overwhelming hum, I saw Mark. He was struggling too, his face contorted in a mask of fear, his hands clutched to his head, a mirror of my own agony. He tried to speak, but only garbled sounds escaped his lips, swallowed by the roar, his authority utterly shattered. You did this, Mark!" I screamed, convinced that he had betrayed us, that this was some twisted, elaborate prank he'd orchestrated, or a dark ritual he'd intended to unleash on us. He was the older kid, the one who knew these things, the one who'd led us here. He had to be responsible. He had to be the one who had set us up. But as I looked at him, truly looked at him, I saw the same terror in his eyes that mirrored my own. He was not in control. He was just as lost, just as trapped, a victim of his own hubris. And then my gaze dropped to the ground, to the glowing lines that pulsed beneath our feet. The full pattern, the intricate design Mark had drawn, now burned with an unholy brilliance, its purpose chillingly clear. And in that moment, as the pressure in my head reached an unbearable peak, as the hum threatened to tear my very being apart, I saw it. The completed symbol, and we were all standing inside it, not just Ben, or Sarah, or Chloe, not just Mark, all of us, every single one of us. We had not just drawn the symbol. We were part of it. We were the components, the living sacrifices, unknowingly completing the design with our very presence. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, stealing my breath, freezing the scream in my throat. We had not agreed to this ritual, but we had become its unwitting participants, its final, horrifying ingredient. The green light flared one last time, blinding, all-consuming. The hum became a single, deafening note that vibrated through every cell of my body, a resonant frequency of pure terror. My friends, their faces now completely blank, their eyes glowing with that same eerie green, slowly turned towards me. Their movements were synchronized, deliberate like automatons, a terrifying ballet of the possessed. I tried to scream again, to fight, to run, but my body was no longer my own. The ground beneath me felt like it was dissolving. pulling me down into an abyss of green light and sound. The last thing I felt was the cold, hard earth giving way, and the overwhelming, inescapable sensation of being utterly, irrevocably consumed. Then silence, a profound, chilling silence, broken only by the distant whisper of the wind through the pines, carrying with it the faint, lingering scent of pine and something else, something ancient and hungry.